very high tariffs. For example, he's putting what he calls a reciprocal tariff of 34% on China. And that is meant to make up for the trade barriers that China imposes on the U.S. These tariffs are paid by American importers and will be likely passed on to consumers. The president says that this is going to attract a massive boom of investment into the United States as companies, if you make the stuff in the U.S., as the president says, you don't have to pay the tariff. So he's predicting billions of investment in the United States and lots of factory jobs. Economists are very skeptical. They think that tariffs push up prices. They make the economy less efficient. They hurt companies, American factories that have to import equipment to make their own stuff. Their costs go up and they become less competitive in the global market. The trade analysts and economists I've talked to today are calling this a disaster for the American economy.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. Now, the Waqf Amendment Bill was passed in the Lok Sabha on late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning in the wee hours after over 12-hour-long marathon debate on the entire legislation. Currently, the bill is being taken up for discussion in the Rajya Sabha, and it should more or less find passage even in the upper house, given the fact that the NDA has the numbers, the government has the numbers in its favor. Now, in the Lok Sabha, 288 votes were cast in favor, while 232 went against the bill. After the debate was held in the lower house, where several political parties from the Treasury benches as well as the opposition presented their arguments. Now, while speaking on the bill, the BJP MP and leader of the upper house, JP Nadda, said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has worked with the principle or on the principle of welfare for all and asserted that people from all sections of society benefited from all central government schemes without any discrimination. Earlier in the day, Congress MP Nasir Hussain responded to BJP MP Radha Mohan Das's charge that Pakistan Zindabad slogan was raised when he won the election. He said, and I quote, "I told my government, if that anyone said it, that person has to be arrested and tried." Now, Congress MP Nasir Hussain also said that the Waqf Amendment Bill is a targeted legislation. It was Union Minister Kiran Rijiju who started the debate from the side of the government and said that it is a wrong impression that non-Muslims can interfere in Waqf. He said that the bill is not an interference in the religious beliefs of Muslims and said that the new bill will be named Ummeed, hope, expectation. He said that the bill includes the recommendations of the Sachar panel.
कई वक्त प्रॉपर्टी है या संस्थाएं हैं बाहर में बहुत गरीब अवस्था में भीख मांगने वाला भी मैंने देखा है. क्यों काम नहीं आ रहा है? अगर सही तरीके से वक्त प्रॉपर्टी को हम डेवलप करेंगे तो मैं कह सकता हूं अगले 3-4 साल के अंदर में करोड़ों गरीब मुसलमानों का जिंदगी आबाद हो जाएगा.
इनको ये समझ में नहीं आ रहा कौन सा मुद्दा उछाले तो इन्होंने वक्फ बोर्ड को लेके आया, इस एक्ट को लेके आके कम्युनल पोलराइजेशन करने का काम कर रहे हैं. आप कह रहे हैं कि हम अपील कर रहे हैं, आप पोलराइज करना चाह रहे हैं.
ये ध्वनि देने की कोशिश हो रही है. मैं इसको सबसे पहले एक जिम्मेवार राजनीतिक दल के राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष के रूप में इस ध्वनि को समाप्त करके इस नैरेटिव को जो बनाया जा रहा है उसका पुरजोर विरोध करता हूं.
So government sources have said that the opposition's attack on why only Muslim professing Islam for 5 years. So Waqf by user has been removed and said practicing Islam for minimum 5 years can donate to Waqf ignores basic understanding. Quote, government sources that this is to ensure that no one has been coerced or unduly influenced to convert to Islam and then made to donate property to Waqf. A 5-year period is reasonable to determine that a Muslim is honestly donating his or her property to Waqf out of free will and that the transfer is properly documented. In the 2013 amendment opened floodgates for anyone to donate to Waqf. The government is correcting this now. The rules of this act will specify how a Muslim professing Islam for 5 years at least will be determined. This is what sources have further added. Well, let's go across to Zafar Islam, renowned educationist, entrepreneur, and also the former Chancellor of the Maulana Azad, the National Urdu University. Zafar Islam ji, namaste and belated greetings on Eid. Good to speak with you. Zafar Sareshwala ji, namaste and good to speak with you. My first question, what is your view on the Waqf bill?
See, as far as, ever since the bill is going to come, my view was very clear that whatever discussion you may have, you may do a Jantar Mantar demonstration or whatever, you may have those placards, we reject Waqf. I was telling a lot of, and the BJP or the India government has numbers. I mean, they have group majority in the parliament, in the Lok Sabha and also in the Rajya Sabha. So this bill is going to happen. Now, I used to tell a lot of Muslim leaders in last few months that look, making presentation to JPC or speaking in the parliament or speaking in media will give you, those limelight. It will not have any impact. If really you feel that X, Y or Z is negative or it will have a far-reaching impact, why don't you open a process of dialogue with the government of the day, with the highest level?
Fair point.
And I said, it is my experience. I mean, I have done this earlier in Gujarat and also now. Lot of issues we have taken up directly with the Prime Minister outside the glare of media. When you come in media, you talk, you'll become a hero. But you need to do quietly, seriously. So that was my advice. And even now, if things have happened, see, I don't think that demonstration and agitation will take you anywhere. It doesn't happen. I mean, I have seen in years, you may demonstrate against any government. No government in the country or anywhere in the world would bend down on your demonstration or agitation. The best way forward is talk directly to them. So I think now, if a lot of people think that negative has happened, why don't you approach? And that should be done by the intellectual Muslims, businessmen, or educationists, and lot of other Muslims outside the purview of politics. And I think, see, ultimately, this government, the Prime Minister or the Home Minister, they are here to rule. Ruling is the main purpose. They are not here to have something against the Muslims or for Hindus or political parties. When they come and they sit in power, Hindu or Muslim is hardly anything. That is just for semantics. Really, it's about ruling.
Governance.
So I think, and my experience of last so many years shows that you go and sit down and talk to them. So that is number one. Second, my concern is, Anand, and this has been right from the beginning. I feel that there has been horrendous mismanagement and with dishonesty about Waqf. If you take very rule of thumb, what is Waqf actually? Waqf is about managing assets. What is it? I mean, you have assets worth, people have been talking that you have 9 lakh acres of land or you have 7 lakh properties. If you have 7 lakh properties, forget about this bill is going to come tomorrow or day after tomorrow. I am talking of now, for the past 75 years. We have, and managing asset, and what is Waqf for? Waqf, the only concern or the only reason where somebody Waqf means donates for the path of Allah is only for 5 things. That the proceeds of this earning or the monetization or the wealth which increases, you take care of the poor, the downtrodden, the underprivileged, the widows or the orphans.
These 5.
This is the main purpose. And if today, if you take those properties, 7 lakh properties, minimum, if you are not even a fund manager, ordinary person, minimum for one property you can get 10,000 rupees per annum, per month rent. If you extrapolate all that, you should be having income of at least 25-30,000 crore. If this would have been done just by small management, I am telling you, Anand, forget about Muslims. Even the Hindus' condition would have been much better by only sending this Waqf wealth going to that. So
Ji.
I think we have failed in two things. We have not managed assets, and there has been dishonesty in that, and also there has been incompetency. And third, ordinary Muslim. Why? Because ordinary Muslim doesn't even know कि वक़फ़ से मुझे कुछ मिलने वाला है. He doesn't even know. In fact, ये
जी.
वक़फ़ बिल जब आना शुरू हुआ तो बहुत सारे मुसलमानों को पता चला कि वक़फ़ जैसी
कोई चीज है जी.
So I think whatever my request to the government would be to that whether with amendment, without amendment, I would want that like anywhere in the world.
Ji.
I mean, I am sitting here in Abu Dhabi. I've been moving in GCC countries. There are waqfs in this part of the world.
Correct.
And those waqfs are managed by world-class asset managers.
Asset managers. Ji.
The waqf of those countries brings the wealth managers or asset managers and gives them that, look, this is $1 billion worth of property asset. We are handing it over to you. Now our mandate is very simple.
Ji.
How much value addition you can give to us from this? And this is managed absolutely professionally like an asset management company. So Government of India is managing a lot of public sector undertakings. There are about 9-10 out of those 9-10, Navratan. I would request Government of India that they create such an atmosphere that this waqf is managed by highest level of professionals, asset managers with honesty and integrity and with highest level of competence, and the proceeds reach where it has to reach.
Ji. So, Zafar ji, let me also ask you this. There are those within, one of the things is that this is Waqf land does not belong to Muslims. It belongs to, because it's donated to Allah. It is supposed to be used for the cause and the benefit or welfare of the people. Would you agree that the Muslim Samaj itself, those who have been, because it's Waqf has been managed by the Muslim Samaj largely, whether part of government, politics, etc., etc. Do you agree, disagree that it's been largely mismanaged?
I'm ready to take blame. Yes, it is our fault. We have mismanaged. For that matter, Mr. Modi has only come 11 years back.
जी.
उससे पहले 70 साल तक कौन था? वही तो मैं कह रहा हूं. अगर हमने मुसलमानों ने औकाफ को सही मानों में मैनेज किया होता,
जी.
with competency, with honesty and integrity, तो इस मुल्क का मुसलमान नहीं, हिंदू भी गरीब नहीं रहता.
नहीं, आप बड़ी बात कह रहे हैं, आप सही बात कह रहे हैं जफर सरेशवाला, लेकिन the fact is that those who are standing and opposing the Waqf Amendment Bill, there are charges against such entities. ओवैसी साहब के खिलाफ भी चार्ज है that they have used Waqf property for profitable activities rather than charitable activities. So what is the way forward?
Yeah, see, I think the way forward is, बोलते हैं let bygones be bygones. अब अमेंडमेंट भी आ गया, सब आ गया. मैं मुसलमानों को ये कहूंगा, जो मुसलमानों में जो लीडर किस्म के जो लोग हैं, मैं कहूंगा कि ठीक है. Of course, we are a secular democracy. We have institutions in the country. If you think that something wrong has happened, of course, courts are there. But I would suggest that within the Muslim community, the process of dialogue should be opened up with the government of the day. And you put your concerns across them directly, that X, Y, Z will have ramifications or it will have long-term negative effects to the Muslims. Maybe not necessary every contention would be accepted by the government. But at least there will be some middle ground. So I think that is one. Second, I think most important is that I would request the government that in Waqf board, even if you are putting Muslims, don't put only those politicians who have no skill of managing assets. You bring people from this field. There are enough asset managers available. Enough in the country who have been doing phenomenal job.
True.
You should bring those kind of people, and a judicious investment process which which monetizes asset and a value addition happens to that. There is an earning stream out of that. And third, that the underprivileged, the poor, the widow, for which actually this Waqf is, it reaches to them. So I think it's not a big deal. The government can do. They bring such people. There are enough available.
But-
and government has been doing. I mean,
Ji.
in lot of their, committees, Government of India brings experts of the particular field. I think they can do here also.
No, but there is also the need, Zafar Sareshwala, that there are more and more intellectual Muslims, moderates, and also sensible people who want the good benefit of the Muslim society at large in Bharat to also speak up more and come up and take responsibility. My other question is, do you see some boil on the ground, unrest on the ground, disruption once the bill finds passage in both the houses? That's what it looks like. Similar to CAA, similar to farmer protests. Is there a chance of unrest?
See, unrest, अब मैं नहीं समझता कि बहुत unrest पॉसिबल है और इससे होता कुछ नहीं है. See, हमने देखा है कि आप डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन और एजिटेशन से होता कुछ भी नहीं है. उससे सबसे बेहतर और आसान तरीका है डायरेक्टली उनसे बात करो. ये सबसे आसान है और easiest है.
Fair point made, Zafar Sareshwala. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you. Have a safe travels and look forward to speaking with you very, very soon. Let's keep this conversation going as we say thank you to Zafar Sareshwala and bring in another person who I have immense respect for, and I am connecting with her after a long time. Zeenat Shaukat Ali ji is with us. Namaste, Zeenat ji. Again, belated greetings for Eid. Let me ask you your perspective. Like Zafar Sareshwala was saying that the 5 causes for which Waqf is supposed to be used, Waqf properties are used. One of the important aspects are widows, women, and also orphans. And you've been not just a prolific Islamic scholar and a teacher, but also working for the cause of the upliftment of many within the community. So let me ask you, your understanding of the Waqf Amendment Bill 2024-25, and do you think it's a step towards reform, or do you believe this is nothing but an overreach and deliberate politics?
No, I do believe that it is a step towards reform because over the years, you see, first of all, let me tell you as a very humble Islamic scholar that Islam promotes reform. It was based on reform. From a pre-Islamic to a direct society, a livable society. So here, what I would like to say is that reform and evolution are part of growth of any individual, of any society, of any community, and of any nation. Without that, one cannot grow. So we have to grow, and the Waqf Bill has its plus points. But Anand, there is one point that I would like to make that I think is a relevant and a very important point, and that is that the bill that I have heard very carefully the arguments from both sides, pro, for, and against, in the Lok Sabha, and they have been very crucial. They have been very interesting, and they have enlightened me a great deal from both the angles.
Ji.
Now, what I would like to say is that yes, we do need reform. There has been corruption, and we cannot deny that. And Islam absolutely forbids that kind of corruption. It has to be overcome, and we are moving in a direction of getting a more solidified, a more concentrated, education with education with improvement of health, with improved employment. We can look at all these aspects. But I should like to make one point that I personally think is important for me, and I'm relating it to you. I'm sharing it with you, and that is this Waqf Amendment Bill, which is going to be passed, goes beyond religious lines. It raises the crucial question as to whether India as a secular state, in a secular state, that all religious endowments, all religious endowments,
Okay, we'll just try and get her back. I think she was joining us via her phone and she seems to have suddenly got a call, and that's the disruption in the line. But she was saying that this is also going to be a test. It goes beyond the religious lines, and she was talking about whether all religious endowments. She's back with us. Yes, let's continue. Ji.
Yeah, what I was saying is that it raises the crucial question whether India as a secular state should take all religious endowments to the same standard of governance and transparency as one is doing with the Waqf Bill, with the Waqf, with reform the Waqf way, and opening the way out for a system where the government could pave the way for greater accountability of all religious endowments. And that, to my mind, is a uniform law across the country, like a uniform civil code. One law, one country, one law. So you have for religious endowments similarly laid down similar rules. Let the Waqf Boards begin, but let it not end there. It is only the beginning, and it should go cut across all religious denominations. That the vast holdings for which there is the intended contributions made over the years by whosoever, is it befitting, the community? Is it benefiting the community? And if it is, then how is it benefiting? So I think, that would be a very important course of action for me. One country, one law for religious endowments, whatever you may call it, technically. Second thing I would like to say is that, this reform, what we call reform, is absolutely essential. Reforming the Waqf system is not just about improving government, the governance of Islamic endowments, as I have said. It is going to look into the framework of all religious properties, whether they're Hindu temples, Christian churches, Jains, the Buddhists, the Sikhs, all of us, and how they are managed with accountability and with transparency. So this is my submission to you.
If I may interrupt you there, Zeenat ji, there's a difference. There's a fundamental difference. If you were to talk about religious entities or religious endowments, then you would have to say a particular masjid or an Eidgah and its properties married with a Gurdwara or a church or a temple. That's where the parity of religious endowments for religious entities, because in Sanatan Pratha, if you look at among Parsis or if you look at among Gurdwaras or or Christians, it's not a central Waqf board, it's not a central board which is managing assets or property that have been donated in the name of Allah. Each temple, each church will be different. So then you will have to, as masjid committees function on their own as a religious entity. There is no governing principle or government involved. In fact, it's the contrary. Masjids are outside government control. Gurdwara committees are outside government control. But temples are under state control. So if you are talking about one nation, one law for all religious endowments, then the state should control all churches, all masjids and all Gurdwaras, or free all temples. Because to compare the Waqf board with temples is perhaps an apple to orange situation.
No, you're not getting my point. That's not what I'm saying. You see, each endowment is a different kind of endowment. What I'm talking about is simply the transparency and the accountability
of endowments.
And whatever where they run. Now, for example, when we have a uniform civil code, there are so many multiple laws only among the Muslims, the Shias, the Sunnis, the Bohras, the Aga Khani, so many complicated laws. As they are among the Parsis and the Sikhs, and everyone has. But what we are trying to do is get the sensibility of a uniformity with justice, with gender justice, with other forms of justice, of equality, of succession laws, of other laws.
So you're saying look at it as endowments, or anybody who donates property in the name of God to any particular religious entity, there should be a uniform rule that governs such an endowment.
That's right. It should, there should be transparency and there should be accountability. I'm not saying government control. I'm not saying that at all. As a matter of fact, I'm saying that, a central control should not exist.
But there should be guidelines for governance and guidelines on how it should be run. There should be it should be rules based.
Guidelines to the states, and all states must follow this, because we are a secular, democratic, and a very proud nation of people, of individuals who are progressive, and we are looking to move forward in life to enhance not only individuals and communities but the entire nation. So if we have one law of this kind, for accountability and, the Waqf Boards paving the way. And then one thing more that you mentioned that I would like to address, if I may. You were asking Mr. Sareshwala this question, that would there be, any kind of reactionary, like the CNN, I mean, like the CAA, movement.
Unrest on ground, yes.
Yes. if there is a grievance, say there is a grievance, for example, and that you may not agree that, Waqf 5 years only, for a Muslim by use 5 years only. Say you disagree on that point. You can always go to the court. There is no need to take anything to the street. There are the courts to decide and there are the courts to intervene. So, you see, one has to go about this, whatever agreements, and what we are looking at is the betterment of the nation, the betterment of the community, and the betterment of all of us. So, when we are looking at that betterment, then we are looking, we are spreading our net much wider, and our umbrella is all Indians together under that. You see, so once we are looking at that, something like that, I think, that will be much more constructive to this entire debate that is actually separating. What I'm suggesting is uniting.
Correct.
We are a united people, Anand. We have been united for years. This kind of a feeling that has recently been coming in.
The othering that you say.
When I'm Muslim, I have so many non-Muslim friends who write to me, talk to me, speak their minds, and criticize me, and I'm very open to that, as so do my Muslim friends. So one has to take individual thinking from where it's coming, and constructive criticism is always good for improvement, for self-improvement.
Fair point. Fair point. Zinaji, I'm pressed for time, so I just quickly want to ask you this aspect of women being included in the Waqf boards.
Lovely. I think it's a superb idea. As a matter of fact, when you said non-Muslims also being introduced at a certain stage, there would be no objection to that, because if you have a uniform law, then there would be many other religions also that would take in experts. What you need is experts from different religions. Say, for example, if I was on the board of a Sikh endowment, I would want the benefit of the Sikh to happen. I would look to how I may make a suggestion as an expert in the field to see to it that, they get the best benefit, and maybe if some ideas I put may be useful to them. So that's what I mean, that, we have to, get out of this knotted understanding of, what is in our minds. I don't know, I feel that, especially in the recent years, we have to overcome that feeling and be a united India, a united people, different communities, different thoughts. And one last thing I want to say, I know you're running out of time, I also have another show. I just need to say this, that the legacy of our country is unique in the world today. All 72 sects of Islam are practiced in India. They may be condemned in other parts of the world. You look at our liberality, our greatness. The Baha'is are there, the Jews are there, the Christians are there, the Sikhs are there. All of us are together, and we are all one people. So you see, that is, I think, something that has to be promoted. That kind of idea, and I think cutting across and making religious endowments, capable and uniform in that sense, that each one of us can contribute to say something nice and do something nice for each other, and share and care. So that's my take.
No, fair point, and I think you bring a very unique perspective as always, Zina Chokkaji. Thank you for your time. I'm pressed because we've got to move on, and there's more development that's happened, the politics of it. Let's focus on that now, and there's news coming through. So there are ripples of the Waqf Amendment Act and political ripples to that. Mohammad Qasim Ansari has resigned from the JDU. That's the latest coming through. He's angry with the JDU leadership for supporting the Waqf Amendment Bill. Arunima joining us with more details. Yes, Arunima.
I'm just going through the letter that he has written. His address is to both Nitish Kumar as well as JDU's working president Sanjay Jha. He has expressed his sense of dissatisfaction because JDU decided to support the Waqf Bill. And he's a senior leader of the JDU. What he alleges is that this is not in sync with the ideology for which the Janata Dal United. And he's very upset with the fact that JDU decided to support the Waqf Bill, which he feels is against the Muslim community and is an attempt to take away the religious freedom that has been guaranteed to the Muslims under the Constitution.
But any reason why he waited until the passage in the Lok Sabha, did not air his objections before?
I think what we have to keep in mind is that Nitish Kumar was in talks continuously with not just his party colleagues from the Muslim community, but he was also meeting Maulanas and senior leaderships of the Muslim community. And he had said that he would keep the best interest of the Muslim community in mind, as he had done in the past. Even yesterday, Sanjay Jha, just before the bill got taken up, the working president said that it is not as if the Muslim community is being discarded or being used and thrown by Nitish Kumar. But Mr. Ansari is not too happy. He thought that ultimately Nitish Kumar would take steps which would, according to him, would keep in mind the interest of his community. But now he feels that's not the case.
Well, now is he one of the many JDU leaders from the Muslim community who are going to perhaps rebel? Is this further trouble for the JDU? Will they be able to stem? Is he going to be only one of them? Or are there going to be many? Talk is that there is some unrest within the JDU and differences are emerging. Meanwhile, Kiran Rijiju is speaking in the upper house.
जा रहे इतने सीनियर होते हुए आप इस तरह का देश में एक कानून सबके लिए चलेगा तो ये देश के लिए अच्छा होता है। मैं डिटेल में जवाब दे सकता हूं, मगर ये मेरा रिप्लाई का टाइम नहीं है। लेकिन आप चले जाएंगे, इसलिए मैंने कहा कि इस तरह का आप बात रख करके चले जाएंगे, बाद में आप रिप्लाई नहीं सुनेंगे, फिर अधूरा हो जाएगा। इसलिए मैं ये कह रहा हूँ।
ऑनरेबल फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर
पड़ेगा सर मुझे।
I'll come to you. मैं भी बीच में एक बार बोलूंगा। I'll come to you. ऑनरेबल फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर।
Sir, I'm very sympathetic to Minority Affairs Minister, sir. Every time when finance-related matters also I face this situation, when I stand up to answer earnestly with all the questions being posed to me, concerned members are never there. So at least he had the courage to stand up and seek your permission to say. But there were one or two points on which I want to just give as much of clarification. As much as Minority Affairs Minister says, we are talking to a senior, very senior legal luminary. So I'll humbly submit my facts. If I heard him right, Honorable Member, in Tamil Nadu or in Andhra, and he also took the name of the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam. In all this, the HRNC is with the government. Government appointed people monitor it, they execute it, they run it. Second, Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam, the executive officer, is appointed by the government of Andhra Pradesh. The endowment board has people who are appointed by the government of Andhra Pradesh, and the entire system is completely under the government of Andhra Pradesh, sir. So it is not as if, Hindus are not being touched at all, only Muslims are. No. There is a huge, in fact, it has led to a lot of feeling that Hindu pilgrims have started feeling that only our temples are being completely controlled by the government and government appointed men. And it is leading to a lot of confusion among the Hindu pilgrims also. It's a matter of concern for all religion. So it is I'm responding to the honorable member who spoke. Anybody who has a comment to make on what I've said are welcome to seek the time from the chair rather than shout me down. And therefore, when I put the facts before, because he did refer to the southern states, the Hindu temples, and also took the name of TTD, the fact is this, sir.
Kapilji. Now, Kapilji.
The finance minister, what I said was that yes, you're right, the temples are being managed by the government. So is the Waqf. That is precisely what I said. The statutory appointees are all by government. That is exactly the point I was making. That is exactly the point that I was making. That if the statutory appointees were all of the government, why did you want to bring this amendment in 2024? That's the point. And to you, sir, your answer to you, you said that there are trusts. Yes, there are trusts. But under the Code of Civil Procedure, when there is a trust, the property belongs to the trust. But there's a difference between Awqaf and trust. Awqaf, the land once donated, belongs to God.
Please round up.
It doesn't belong to the trust.
Kapilji, round up now.
Sir, it belongs to God. You cannot sell it ever. A trust can sell property. Waqf property cannot be sold. And Waqf property can be donated for religious purposes. It can be donated for shelter homes. It can be donated. Allow me. Don't interrupt now. It can be given for schools. It can be given for schools. It can be given for graveyards. It can be given for the benefit of women, and once given, it can't be taken back, unlike trusts.
Thank you.
So therefore, there's a difference.
Thank you, Kevin.
No, sir, one last thing. Only one.
Okay.
Because, sir, they are and I'll come to vote against you, not to worry. And I listen to you. Now, one last thing, sir. They say we have abolished waqfs by user. That's what they have said. Now, so there's a Supreme Court judgment that they rely upon. That is the Babri Masjid judgment. Please note, the Honorable Minority Affairs Minister should note, paragraph 1134 of the Babri Masjid judgment, which says waqf by user is an accepted mode of creating a waqf.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Please honor the judgment that you extol the virtues of to the rest of the country.
जीरा से प्याज बुझाओ।
The tariffs deepen a trade war he kicked off on his return to the White House and reverses decades of trade liberalization that have shaped the global order. He used a poster to illustrate reciprocal tariffs.
They like me, I like them.
Including 34% on China and 20% on the European Union. Trading partners are expected to respond with countermeasures of their own that could lead to dramatically higher prices for everything.
Effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
Meanwhile, a separate set of tariffs on auto imports that Trump announced last week will take effect starting on April 3rd. Economists have warned that tariffs could slow the global economy, raise the risk of recession, and increase living costs for the average U.S. family by thousands of dollars.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed.
President Trump dropped a bomb today on the global economy. He announced 10% tariffs on all countries and special, much higher tariffs on specific countries. Stock markets are falling on this news, which came late in the afternoon after American markets closed. He's keeping a campaign promise. He talked about a 10%, what he called universal tariff on all imports. And he's hitting most countries with that, but he's also singled out about 60 other countries for specific, very high tariffs. For example, he's putting what he calls a reciprocal tariff of 34% on China. And that is meant to make up for the trade barriers that China imposes on the U.S. These tariffs are paid by American importers and will be likely passed on to consumers. The president says that this is going to attract a massive boom of investment into the United States as companies, if you make the stuff in the U.S., as the president says, you don't have to pay the tariff. So he's predicting billions of investment in the United States and lots of factory jobs. Economists are very skeptical. They think that tariffs push up prices. They make the economy less efficient. They hurt companies, American factories that have to import equipment to make their own stuff. Their costs go up and they become less competitive in the global market. The trade analysts and economists I've talked to today are calling this a disaster for the American economy.
The tariffs deepen a trade war he kicked off on his return to the White House and reverses decades of trade liberalization that have shaped the global order. He used a poster to illustrate reciprocal tariffs.
They like me, I like them.
Including 34% on China and 20% on the European Union. Trading partners are expected to respond with countermeasures of their own that could lead to dramatically
US President Donald Trump has announced a 27% discounted reciprocal tariff on Bharat in an effort to restructure trade imbalances. Now, meanwhile, US stocks are down sharply. Bloodbath on Nasdaq and NYSE, Apple, Amazon sharply down.
India, very, very tough. Very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left. He's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing.
Now, the Commerce Ministry in a statement said that the US President issued an executive order on reciprocal tariffs imposing additional ad valorem duties ranging from 10 to 50% on imports from all trading partners. The baseline duty of 10% will be effective from the 5th of April 2025, and the remaining country-specific additional ad valorem duty will be effective from the 9th of April 2025. The Department of Commerce is carefully examining the implications of the various measures, announcements made by the President of the USA. Keeping in view the vision of Viksit Bharat, the department is engaged with all stakeholders, including Indian industry and exporters, taking feedback of their assessment of the tariffs and assessing the situation. Well, let's go across to our guests and try and understand with them. Now, is this a setback? Is it a mixed bag? How would you look at it? Vivek Singh, economist with us. Professor Manojit Mandal is there with us, political analyst. And also Dilip Shenoy, Chairman, Bharat Web3 Association and the former Secretary General of FICCI. Bharatji, and to Professor Manojit Mandal and Vivekji. Namaste. Thank you very, very much. Bharatji, your thoughts first up. How would you see, is it less than the impact? Is it less than what was anticipated around midnight? And once he announced it, was there a little bit of a relief that it's not as bad as we thought it would be, but is it still bad? How would you read this? Dilipji, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sir, question for you. Dilipji, sorry. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So, thank you for this question. And if you look at what people were anticipating, say midnight earlier this night, was perhaps a higher rate of tariff. Some sectors were looking at a higher rate of tariff because the figure Trump was quoting was 50. India levies 54% average tariff, etc. So it was going to be tariff for tariff. So what he was saying earlier was 54 for 54, but luckily that did not happen. And he's actually gone around and said it's halving the thing for all countries. The second second apprehension was that it'll be country specific and product specific. That did not happen. It's actually all across the board, and interestingly, some of the competing countries for India exports into the US have higher tariffs, right? And therefore, and very interestingly, some sectors like pharmaceuticals, energy, copper, and other things have been exempted. So, for the exempted sectors, it's very positive. For the sectors where the tariffs from competing nations have gone up more than from India, it's also positive. And where the challenge is that where we are facing kind of a disadvantage because tariffs being imposed on our products, or in those sectors which are very consumer oriented and purchasing power oriented, there would be a challenge for those sectors and those companies in those sectors to continue the volume of exports to the US.
E-commerce also, they said, I think one of the clauses says anything less than $800, there's no additional duty. Now, does that help us? Do we look at the bright sides, the silver linings, or do we worry about how are we going to manage? Does it give us an edge with respect to textiles and some of our key exports, or is it going to hurt us too? Because many are saying that the US economy will go into a decline. How adversely will it impact us, Dilipji? Quickly before we go on to Professor Manojit Mandal.
Very quickly, textiles, all our competitors, Vietnam and other such countries have got much higher duties than us. So it's a relative advantage. Yes, if the economy goes into a recession, consumption power goes in, but there's talk of Trump giving an income tax cut and other measures to boost the domestic economy and domestic purchasing powers. So that will depend on those exports from India to the US. But a lot macroeconomists or people are saying this is going to lead to recession and going to lead to a reduction in global trade, going to look in retaliation. So that may make the whole global economic environment a bit uncertain and challenging, and that may impact GDP growth and exports for many countries.
Because we just looked at the numbers now. Bharat's exports to the US is 2.2% of our GDP compared to some of the other nations which are far more heavily dependent on the US markets. So is that also something that will allow us to brace this impact, Professor Manojit Mandal? How would you read this?
No, I do believe that this is going to impact our economy. In fact, in anticipation of what might happen, the market has remained very, very volatile for the past few weeks. You can understand from the market experts, they were all thinking about much more, imposition of what he is calling reciprocal tariff than merely 26% or so. But I think there would be retaliation as well. I mean, China, if you think about the European countries, even the smaller countries like Sri Lanka and Pakistan, they would suffer more than India, of course, because their economy is already in a kind of totter. But I think India too is going to suffer. What we need to do, we need to think about our agriculture producers, which are largely going to US for their sustenance and all. We also need to think about some sense of retaliation. Otherwise, this might continue. I mean, what you find from Trump perspective, from America for Americans perspective, is a kind of jingo nationalistic taxation tariff that Donald Trump has talked about. So I think India, being a nationalist party, being a nationalist leader, should also think about some kind of retaliation if negotiation does not happen. But I do believe this is going to impact Indian economy, at least in the long run.
Many are saying at least 0.3 to 0.8% of the GDP could be shaved off, is what many are saying, estimating. Vivekji, do you agree, disagree? Your thoughts?
Yeah, we know that India is an important trading partner of USA, and we also know that right now USA is facing multiple economic problems. So there is economic slowdown, inflation, unemployment, and the government of USA wants to generate at least $6 trillion over a period of 10 years as an external revenue. So discounted as reciprocal rates are being announced, and it will happen because it will have negative impact on the economy. But I think that it's going to be favorable for us because ultimately, if you look at the competitive nations, then up to 50%, like China 34%, Vietnam 46%, Cambodia 49%, South Korea 25%. So 26% means 16% plus 10%, 26% is being imposed on Indian import. So it's not going to have major impact on many sectors like IT sectors, pharma, auto, because ultimately 34% is the ad valorem duty plus 20% is the basic duty that is being charged on China. So that loss of China we can implement. Second thing is that is very favorable, and I am saying for past few days that it's a negotiation, because in international trade bilateral negotiations are very important, and we know the personal relationship with Modi as well as the Trump. So we can say that it's a negotiation that is going to play a crucial role. So it's now being, we were anticipating that it will be more than 50%, but right now it's around 25-26%. So I am very sure that when negotiation will be there with the Indian counterparts, then it will further go down. So we have to be very hopeful, and as far as GDP is concerned, 6% growth rate we are going to have, there is no doubt. So shortly it may have impact on certain sectors, but over a long period of time, because of our relationship with the USA, and because USA also want to handle the China, so ultimately it will always like to have good relation with India. And when we sit and we will negotiate, and you know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is very good in negotiation. So when we will negotiate, certainly that 26% may come to 68% or less than that.
Well, Professor Manojit Mandal says there should be some retaliation. Vivek Singh says there should be negotiation. Dilip Shinoy, what is it that we should do? Dilipji.
So, we are already in a negotiation for the bilateral trade agreement. In fact, the first round of discussions were held, last week. And I think that should continue in one respect very, very clearly. and we should continue to engage with them, because I think if we don't engage, then when we lose the chance of actually whatever advantage would come by engagement, by yielding our place of engagement to other countries who could engage the US and then take a better deal than what we could have actually done. So it's a kind of a competitive challenge there, because we need to constantly engage. Retaliation, I mean, if you go back to 2018, 2019, when Trump had levied the duty on steel and aluminum, India did retaliate at that point of time. But I think this time, since it's a different type of a phenomenon, it's across the board of phenomena, a discussion and an agreement, the bilateral trade agreement, will be a better step than retaliatory tariff at this point of time, at least for India.
Professor Manojit Mandal, retaliation how? It's easy to say retaliate, but should Bharat compromise a larger strategic advantage and goal just to look at an eye for eye, tariff to tariff retaliation?
No, I said that if negotiation doesn't happen, so from 2.4%, it's over 10 times jump now. It was barely 2.4%. Now it's becoming 26%. So there should be room for negotiation. I mean, the Prime Minister must talk to his quote-unquote friend in Donald Trump and talk about that. This is a huge leap in terms of how our tariffs are being imposed. And the facts remain that India is a huge market for US. I mean, the software that I'm speaking to you through is also, Microsoft is one of the biggest giant companies that is doing business in India. I mean, in the software business, I think one of the huge markets. So now, if US, we need to also show some teeth. That look, we are there for negotiation. But if you cannot sort of agree to our terms, because you are using us as market. And look at the speech that Trump is saying that all other countries have looted us. I think India is the most unfortunate country which was looted by the Western countries, beginning from Europe to now USA. Everyone knows the kind of history. I mean, the kind of money that the UK stolen. There's $45 trillion in 200 years of their regime. And you had a show on this, and probably I participated in that particular show. So India is a country that remained the most unfortunate country in the history of the world. It was the richest country in the world in that sense. It was looted by everyone. Trump began with the same kind of, emotive, nationalistic speech. So why can't we do the same thing? So now it's our turn. We are an independent country. We, as propagated by Mr. Modi and his, the followers, that India is developing like anything. So now it's time for us to also dictate terms to the Western countries, including USA, if needed.
You make a very fair point, and it's quite emotive there. But I'm looking at this number on the screen, and it says our export dependence on the US of A is 2.2% of our GDP. So why can't we look at the option of increasing our exports to other nations which contribute to 97.98%? And try and reduce the US export dependence further down.
It's a very good question. Anand, let me give an example. Very mundane materials which is moody in Bangladesh. This is called puff rice. The Bangladesh exports puff rice to Sweden, and they are making huge money of that very meager kind of a thing. And you don't believe. I have friends in Sweden. Puff rice is extremely popular in Sweden, but they are unfortunately going from Bangladesh, not from India. But India is the biggest.
Sweden will come in the
puff rice.
Sweden will come in the EU FTA. So there is conversation with the EU which is talking about it. We are negotiating FTA. We are negotiating. We are in negotiation. But what do we need to do as a country? Should we start getting into those areas where we have not looked aggressively and try and use that as a competitive platform? And what does the Indian entrepreneur, the Indian farmer, the Indian manufacturing industry, the SMEs, what do they need to do, Vivek Singh?
In case of international trade, because I am professor of that, so in case of international trade, direction of trade is very important. So no doubt that those areas or those countries where we have not explored, we have to go, and certainly we are going. So as far as USA is concerned, it's very important. Just one figure I would like to give that as far as the trade surplus is concerned, it's for years we have 35 to 45 billion dollars in trade surplus with the USA. So ultimately, if we will sit on the table, then we can negotiate that we have only 45 billion dollar trade surplus, and like a country like China, it has more than 300 billion dollar surplus. So in that case, we can have more of the import of the defense equipment, and we can have more import of the crude oil from USA. So ultimately, there will not be problem with the trade surplus because that is a major concern for USA. So that we can resolve, and we can put this fact, and absolutely it will have impact on the counterpart, and there will be negotiations. But most important thing is that as a country, we are a progressing country, we are one of the fastest growing country. So ultimately, we have to make the momentum, and in that case, we have to have good relation with the, especially the economic and trade relation with the USA. So we cannot ignore. But there are many other options. We can go for the BRICS. We can also have further. We can have more trade with the China. So there are many options, and those areas where we have not explored, we can go also to those countries. But ultimately, we have to look at it is one of the 27 trillion dollar economy. So ultimately, we cannot ignore. And I am very sure that whatever is going to happen, because our anticipation was different. Right now, we have the 50% the tariff, reciprocal tariff duty. So when we will sit on the table, and because of Trump and Modi relationship, so when we will sit on the table, we will negotiate, and I am very sure that this will go further. But it will take few months.
Well, it'll take a few months. UNGA is in September. Around fall is when they wanted to establish and see if they can lock in a bilateral trade deal. Will that or will that not happen? We'll see. There is going to be a global recalibration, many are saying. How fast are we? How nimble are we? And how keen are we? As a nation, its industry, its people, that's upon us. Do we just sit, wait and watch and allow others to try and go ahead and steam ahead? Or do we take the initiative and say, all right, this is the time that the sharks will start biting? That's the big question. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Engaging conversation as always. Thank you for your time. We're going to wind up this edition of The Right Stand on that note. Stay with us, Brass Tacks, after the break.
The tariffs deepen a trade war he kicked off on his return to the White House and reverses decades of trade liberalization that have shaped the global order. He used a poster to illustrate reciprocal tariffs.
They like me, I like them.
Including 34% on China and 20% on the European Union. Trading partners are expected to respond with countermeasures of their own that could lead to dramatically higher prices for everything.
Effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
Meanwhile, a separate set of tariffs on auto imports that Trump announced last week will take effect starting on April 3rd. Economists have warned that tariffs could slow the global economy, raise the risk of recession, and increase living costs for the average U.S. family by thousands of dollars.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed.
President Trump dropped a bomb today on the global economy. He announced 10% tariffs on all countries and special, much higher tariffs on specific countries. Stock markets are falling on this news, which came late in the afternoon after American markets closed. He's keeping a campaign promise. He talked about a 10%, what he called universal tariff on all imports. And he's hitting most countries with that, but he's also singled out about 60 other countries for specific, very high tariffs. For example, he's putting what he calls a reciprocal tariff of 34% on China. And that is meant to make up for the trade barriers that China imposes on the U.S. These tariffs are paid by American importers and will be likely passed on to consumers. The president says that this is going to attract a massive boom of investment into the United States as companies If you make the stuff in the US, as the president says, you don't have to pay the tariff. So